He was supposed to be in Denver until Monday. That's what his out of office said. That's what he told me when he kissed me goodbye on Thursday morning, coffee half finished, suitcase zipper jammed, his mind already at the conference. So when his name lit up my phone at 6:37 p.m. on Saturday night, I almost didn't answer. I was on my second glass of wine, candles lit, legs tucked under me on the couch. But something in me paused because the text wasn't small talk. It wasn't love. It was strategy. "Can you check something for me?" I frowned. A beat passed, then the second one hit. "Sabrina says a tall guy just walked into the apartment with my wife." Everything in me stilled. I stared at those words like they might vanish if I blinked. I read them again. Then the third one came. "She offered to take pictures." My heart tripped hard against my ribs. I sat upright, wine glass forgotten on the side table. The TV was still playing something forgettable, a rerun of a cooking show, or maybe a sitcom. It didn't matter. Everything outside the glow of that screen was noise now. "You're asking me?" Of course. That was Sabrina's line. 4 words: sweet, casual, dangerous, and somehow more loaded than any message I'd seen in months. Because I knew her, and I knew exactly how she looked when she said things like that. Wide-eyed, pretty, always a little too helpful. But this time, it wasn't flirtation. It was a door opening, one I wasn't prepared for. If you're still listening and any of this feels uncomfortably familiar, hit like and subscribe. Most people just listen in silence, but that one click tells the team these stories matter. I tapped the screen, throat dry. There was no anger in me, no rage, just a cold stillness sinking in under the skin, because part of me had already known something was off. The changes had been slow, creeping in like mold you don't notice until it's everywhere. More perfume, locked phone, her laugh when she thought I wasn't listening. The worst part was how normal she still acted, still texted me random memes, still asked me to grab oat milk, still left the porch light on when I flew home late. But that light didn't mean welcome anymore. It just meant routine. Sabrina sent the first photo without waiting for me to say yes. It wasn't graphic, just a wide shot of my living room, the couch I assembled with my wife 2 years ago, a bottle of red on the coffee table, 2 glasses. Her knees tucked under her, like they used to be with me, and him leaning back like he belonged there. I recognized the smug posture instantly. I'd seen it in guys who thought the husband was too slow, too polite, too unaware. The second image came 10 minutes later, her hand on his chest, mid-laugh, hair down, the silk robe I bought her last Christmas half open, and not a trace of hesitation on her face. Then the third one. She was leaning in. He wasn't stopping her. Sabrina added one final message. "I don't like liars." I didn't answer. I just stared at the pictures until the screen dimmed itself. It was strange what I felt then. Not the collapse I expected, not heartbreak, more like a door quietly shutting inside me. I sat back on the edge of the hotel bed, let my hands fall to my knees. The TV kept playing to no one. There was no use texting my wife. She'd claim it was a cousin, a friend from high school, a work contact. She'd say I was being paranoid, that I always overthink things, that I should trust her, that she deserved her space. Instead, I opened my laptop and logged into the camera system we'd installed 2 years ago, ostensibly for the dogs. Motion triggered, sound enabled, synced to cloud storage. It had been off for months. She said it creeped her out, so I left it alone, but I never removed it. And now, it had a new purpose. I kept the light off in my hotel room, just sat there in the dark with my back against the headboard and the screen glowing cold in my hands. Sabrina's texts came in like slow drips of poison, not rushed, not panicked, just calm, methodical updates, as if she was logging evidence more than sharing gossip. "White wine, Chardonnay, I think." She opened it for him. I didn't reply, just watched the next dots dance, then vanish. She's laughing like it's the funniest thing she's ever heard. He said something about needing to decompress. Then a pause. I could feel her looking through the blinds, deciding how far she was willing to go for me. He's on the couch now, shoes off. She's sitting closer. The air in the room was stale. I hadn't opened the window since I arrived. My dinner sat untouched on the desk. Room service tray with a steak I thought I'd want. I didn't. The next message hit different. Should I take pictures? I stared at the question. My thumbs hovered over the screen for a few seconds, then tapped slow. only if you're comfortable. It wasn't a command. I wasn't going to ask a neighbor to become a spy, but I also wasn't going to stop her. The reply didn't come right away. 10 full minutes passed. I counted, each one stretching longer than the last. Then finally, the images landed one after another, spaced just enough that I knew she was choosing her moments carefully. The first one showed the mid-laugh. My wife's head tilted back, the edge of her robe falling open just enough to suggest how comfortable she was. His hand was on the back of the couch, fingers dangling too close to her shoulder. The second was tighter, him leaning toward her, saying something low near her ear, her eyes down, smiling. Her posture told the whole story. She wasn't nervous, she wasn't unsure, she was deep into it. The third was from a new angle, through the kitchen window maybe. His hand was on her knee, her hand was over his, no space left between them. I didn't move, didn't swear, I just let the glow of the phone trace their betrayal across my face. Then Sabrina's final message, I don't like liars. I exhaled once, long and slow, not anger, just confirmation, not some paranoid theory unraveling. Reality, lined up in pixels and timestamps. My wife was exactly who I was starting to fear she might be. I opened the hotel notepad, wrote 3 names in ink, my lawyer, my accountant, one old friend who owed me a favor, then folded the page in half and placed it under my phone. No speeches, no thoughts about why or how long. That wasn't the point anymore. This wasn't about saving a marriage, it was about saving my own damn dignity. I scrolled back to the first message Sabrina had sent, the one that shattered whatever delusion I'd been holding on to. I read it again, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to remember how it started, the exact moment when someone else saw what I hadn't been willing to admit. I typed 2 words, "Thank you." She replied almost instantly, "You okay?" I stared at that question longer than I should have, because the truth was, I didn't know, but I knew I would be, so I didn't answer. I set my phone face down on the pillow beside me, then stood up and turned on the lamp. The room didn't feel so dark anymore. The real shift wasn't in the evidence, it was in me. For the first time in months, maybe longer, I didn't feel confused. I didn't feel anxious. I felt clear, cut loose, floating maybe, but no longer tied to a version of reality someone else was scripting for me. Let her laugh too loud, let him sit where I used to sit, let her believe the door would always swing back open if she needed it to. She had no idea I'd already started closing it behind her. She was folding laundry on the couch when I walked in, calm, like it was just another Monday night. Her phone buzzed once and she glanced at it, smiled, then quickly set it face down on the coffee table. That smile stuck with me, too practiced, too fast. I dropped my bag by the door and didn't say much. Just walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, took the first bottle of water I saw. She called over her shoulder, "How was the trip?" "Productive," I said. "Tiring." "Did you sleep okay?" "Enough." I paused long enough to meet her eyes. "You look good." She smiled again, that sweet, easy smile she always used when she wanted to skip deeper questions. Then went back to folding a t-shirt that didn't look like mine. I walked over and kissed her cheek. Her skin was warm. Clean shampoo scent, some new kind I didn't recognize. Something with citrus and mint, probably a sample from a boutique downtown. Her hand brushed my arm lightly, almost hesitant. I didn't linger. I just stepped away and said, "I'm going to shower and crash early." She nodded. "Okay, I'll join you later." But she didn't. I knew she wouldn't. And upstairs, I took my time. Showered, let the steam fill the room and cleared my thoughts, one layer at a time. When I came out, the house was quieter. She was still downstairs, probably finishing a show, probably texting, probably smiling that same smile into the screen again. I didn't go to bed. Instead, I opened the small closet in my office, pushed past the old router box, the spare HDMI cables, the crate of random electronics I never got around to tossing. Behind them all was the base station, a little black hub with no lights unless it was running. It hadn't been running for a while, but the battery was still good, the memory card was still inside. I held it in my hand for a second, thumb resting on the corner like I was debating. But I wasn't, not really. Downstairs, the bookshelf hadn't moved. I'd built it myself. Sturdy, heavy, fake walnut veneer hiding real wiring. She always said it made the room feel warmer. What she didn't know was that I'd built it with a recessed panel near the bottom shelf, just wide enough to hide a camera the size of a thumb drive. I'd used it when our dogs were younger, back when they'd chew the baseboards if left alone too long. It was motion activated, stored everything to a cloud account tied to a burner email I never deleted. I pulled the shelf out half an inch, reached behind and found the small notch where the mount used to sit, clipped the new one in, snapped it flush, powered the base station upstairs from my laptop, synced it, quiet as a whisper. No clicks, no beeps, no blinking light. I tested it once, waved a hand across the room, then checked the feed. Clean image, sound clear enough to catch her breathing if she stood close enough. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel ashamed. Just ready. That night, she came to bed after midnight. I was already under the covers, back turned. She slid in without saying anything. Her side of the mattress barely moved. She didn't touch me. I didn't need her to. 'Cause she wasn't the woman I thought she was anymore, and I wasn't the man who needed her permission to open his eyes. The next morning, I made coffee. She floated around the kitchen in a robe that used to be mine. I watched her hum a tune under her breath, light, breezy, like nothing cracked beneath her surface. I kissed her on the forehead and said, "Have a good day." Then I left. Sat in the car for 3 full minutes before pulling away, watching the feed on my phone, testing the audio. It picked up her voice as she called someone. Laughter, a pause, then her saying, "Yeah, no, he doesn't suspect a thing. I told you, it's handled." Handled, sure, but not by her. She thought I was asleep, head turned toward the wall, breathing steady. I had made sure of it. Blankets pulled high, one arm slack beside me, chest rising and falling just slow enough to be believable. She'd always said I slept like a rock. That night, I made sure to live up to it. At 10:42 p.m., her phone lit up on the nightstand. I felt the shift before I saw it, her weight easing off the mattress, the smallest creak of floorboards under bare feet, a breath held too long. She padded quietly across the room into the hallway, down the stairs. I stayed still, waited, then slid one hand under the mattress and pulled out my own phone, already synced to the feed. The camera in the bookshelf activated the second she passed by. I tapped into the audio. The connection crackled for a moment, then her voice, low and hushed, filled my ear. "No, he doesn't suspect. He's been too distracted lately." She was in the kitchen. The same kitchen we once planned our mornings in, where she'd laugh about my over-buttered toast, steal sips of my coffee, kiss me mid-yawn. That same space now hosted lies. She leaned against the counter, her robe loosely tied. The camera caught her silhouette, the soft blue light of the fridge casting a halo behind her. I just waited for him to go to sleep. He's been acting so normal. It's almost annoying. A pause, then a quiet laugh. Her laugh. "He even kissed my forehead tonight, like something out of a movie. He has no idea." The words didn't pierce. They didn't ignite. They just settled into place like tiles I'd already laid in my mind. "Of course I'll see you this weekend." "No, I told him I have a work thing. He doesn't ask questions anymore." More silence, then the words that shut down whatever softness I had left. "He's useful still. For now." That one stayed. Not the laughter, not the breathy lies about being too tired or bad signal or "I'll call you back." It was that word. Useful. She hung up 3 minutes later. Her steps came back up the stairs. I shut off the feed, slid the phone back under the mattress, and adjusted my breathing again. She climbed into bed like nothing happened. Turned her back to me, phone on the charger, not even checking if I stirred. I watched the shadows on the wall shift until they disappeared. The silence between us was vast, but not empty, because I knew, not in theory, not in suspicion, not in gut feeling, not in maybe something's off. I knew. Her voice, her timing, the exact moment she shifted from partner to actor, and the way she never once imagined I might already be listening. I didn't speak the next morning. She made coffee and played a podcast loud enough to fill the room, like she needed sound to drown the quiet. She smiled at me like nothing had shifted, like we were still us. I smiled back, because I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to beg for truth she'd already thrown away. I just opened my files, tagged the audio from 10:42 p.m., and added it to a folder called Final Steps. Then I went upstairs, locked my office door, and started writing the first draft of a letter she wouldn't expect. It wouldn't be an argument. It wouldn't be emotional. It would be facts, arranged like chess pieces because she wasn't playing a game anymore. She was standing on the board, and I was done pretending not to notice. 3 nights later, I was trimming the hedge by the driveway. Not because it needed it. Honestly, it was already too neat. But because I needed something repetitive, something simple, something that didn't ask me to pretend. The sun was down, the air just starting to cool. Streetlights buzzed faintly above, and every few minutes a car rolled past, headlights spilling briefly over the sidewalk before vanishing again. That's when I heard her. "You're gonna square those things right into extinction." I turned. Sabrina was leaning on her porch rail, glass of red in one hand, her other wrapped loosely around her sweater. "They bother me," I said. She smiled, but it wasn't teasing. "Yeah, I get that." I straightened, dusted the clippings off my jeans. She watched me for a second, then nodded toward her front door. "I made too much dinner. Want to help me reduce leftovers?" She said it lightly, but her eyes didn't flinch. For a half second, I almost declined, out of habit, out of instinct. But something in her tone, a kind of quiet normalcy that didn't ask for explanation, stopped me. "Sure," I said. Her kitchen smelled like garlic and lemon and something roasted low and slow. Plates were already set. 2, not 3. She poured more wine without asking and pushed a bowl of something warm toward me. Chicken, maybe. I didn't care. We ate mostly in silence, but it wasn't awkward. It was simple, clean. She sat across from me in a faded sweatshirt, bare feet tucked under her, like this was just what people did. Eat, drink, exist next to each other without needing to perform. Halfway through, she asked, "How's she been?" I didn't answer. Didn't need to. Sabrina looked down, twisted her ring around her finger. Just a small silver band, probably nothing more than jewelry. But the motion said she noticed things others missed. "I saw him again," she said softly. 2 days ago, midday." She let him in like it was nothing. My fork paused. I didn't react. I didn't need to anymore. She studied me, not for weakness, for signal. "I don't like seeing decent people played," she said. Her voice didn't tremble. It wasn't performative. It was almost clinical, like someone pointing out a crack in a windshield before it shattered. I just nodded. Because what was there to say? That I agreed? That I already knew? That I had recordings, timestamps, footage backed up 3 ways? Sabrina didn't ask. She didn't press. She just refilled my glass, then her own, and raised it half an inch. "To truth," she said. I lifted mine. "To seeing clearly." We didn't toast, just drank. Outside, the wind picked up a little. Chimes down the block caught it, and for a moment the whole street sounded distant, like some other life. "You ever wonder," she said after a long stretch of quiet, "how many people fake whole marriages just to avoid change in zip codes?" I looked at her. She didn't look back. She just stared at the flame of the candle between us. "Not anymore," I said. She nodded once. "Yeah, me neither." The night stretched a little longer. We didn't talk about love or betrayal or whatever she thought she saw that day. The man walked into my house. We didn't talk about what came next. But when I stood to leave, she walked me to the door and said, "Whatever you're planning, just know you're not crazy." And that stayed with me more than anything, not because I needed reassurance, but because it told me she understood. Not the details, just the weight. She was careful not to ask too many questions when I told her I'd be out of town again. "Workshop in Hartford," I said, slipping the made-up agenda into her hand with just enough eye contact to make it feel real. "It's optional, but I need the credits." She nodded, distracted. "Do you want me to pack anything for you?" "No, I've got it." It was too easy. No suspicion, no pause. Just a peck on the cheek and a "safe travels, babe," as she adjusted her earrings in the hallway mirror. By Friday evening, she texted twice. Once about a missing charger, once to say the hot water was running weird. I replied politely. Nothing clingy, nothing to suggest I was 5 minutes away, sipping coffee across the street from our building, watching her window for any flicker of movement. Saturday, 4:15 p.m., I walked 2 doors down and knocked. Sabrina opened her door like she'd been expecting me. No makeup, hair twisted up, a large mug in her hand, steam rising. "He's not there yet," she said before I could ask. "But I charged everything. You want to set up?" I nodded. We moved in silence. Her living room had a direct view of our unit across the small courtyard. She'd cleared space near the window. Tripod already in place, DSLR connected to her tablet, battery full. She handed me the laptop I'd left the night before. The feed from the bookshelf camera came online smoothly. Crisp resolution, mic live. Our house looked clean, normal, neutral lighting. A faint candle still burning on the kitchen counter. A wine glass already out. 4:37 p.m. She let him in wearing the same dress she wore on our anniversary last year. I said nothing, just leaned forward, tapped to record, and watched. He hugged her like it was routine, like this wasn't their first time. His hand stayed too long at her lower back. She smiled up at him like she didn't even need to lie anymore. From Sabrina's balcony, the side view came in next, a perfect shot through the dining room window. Same scene, different lens. He said something that made her laugh hard, shoulders tilting forward, hand resting on his chest like muscle was enough to make up for integrity. He poured the wine this time. Poured hers first. They sat close. Too close. No room for misunderstanding. Sabrina was behind me, quiet, focused. She didn't narrate, didn't ask questions, just adjusted the zoom now and then, shifting between shots, documenting, like it mattered, like she knew this wasn't about jealousy or heartbreak. It was about evidence. At 5:12 p.m., they kissed. Not a lean-in, not a hesitant, maybe we shouldn't moment. It was casual, open, practiced. I hit the second record button. Sabrina's breath caught, just a little. I didn't look at her. The audio picked up her saying, "You always taste like cinnamon." His reply, "That's your fault." A sick joke, a sweet inside thing. Not mine. 5:27 p.m., they disappeared upstairs. The feed from the hallway camera went dark for a few minutes. Then motion again, her hand brushing his shirt collar as they returned to the living room. More wine. Slower movements. The kind that said comfort, not risk. She was proud of this. No guilt in her eyes. Just ownership. I closed the laptop. Sabrina sat beside me, legs crossed, face unreadable. "Got what you need?" she asked. I nodded once. More than. We sat there a few minutes longer, the blue tint of dusk washing the walls. Outside, the wind picked up. I could hear someone's wind chime down the block. "She doesn't know you're watching," Sabrina said quietly. "She thinks I'm trusting." She looked down, picked at the hem of her sleeve. "She doesn't deserve that." "I know." I stood, stretched once. Sabrina followed me to the door. As I stepped out, she touched my arm. Not a flirt, not a plea, just contact. "If this goes where I think it's going," she said, "make sure she never forgets how easy it was to lose you." I nodded, then left without a word. Back in my car, I opened the laptop again, scrubbed through the footage one more time, labeled the files, backed them up, encrypted them, stored them twice. I wasn't building revenge, I was building a timeline. One even she couldn't talk her way out of. Monday started like any other. She moved around the kitchen in that robe she always said was too soft to wash properly, sipping coffee with one hand, scrolling with the other. Her phone buzzed twice, same tone she always used for her group chat, which had become her all-purpose alibi for everything from late dinners to cold moods. I sat at the table, eating toast I didn't want, watching her move through the kitchen like it was still hers, like nothing had shifted. That was her gift, really, treating the ongoing betrayal like it was part of some routine we'd both silently agreed to. "Hey," she said over her shoulder, "can you grab my dry cleaning today? Should be ready by 5. She said it so naturally, like I was still doing errands for someone who didn't lie to my face and warm someone else's bed, like I still owed her the simple favor of making her day easier. I didn't answer right away, just set my coffee down, quiet, clean. Then I looked at her. "Ask your gym buddy." She turned, slower than usual. "What?" Her voice didn't crack, but her smile faltered. I watched the muscles in her face tighten just slightly, cheeks pulling in, mouth adjusting like she couldn't figure out the right expression. Confused, amused, offended, they all flickered through her eyes in a second and vanished just as quickly. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single printed still, black and white, high resolution, time-stamped, her hand on his chest, his mouth close to her ear, her mouth open in mid-laugh. Her other hand, not visible in most angles, was very visible in this one. I placed it on the table, rotated it toward her, and leaned back in my chair. She looked down and froze. No denial, no gasp, no sudden tears, just silence. She didn't sit. She didn't move. For a moment, I wondered if she'd even remembered that exact moment, the dress she wore, the way she held herself like someone who hadn't been afraid of getting caught. Now she looked like someone caught. "Where did you get this?" she asked eventually. Her tone wasn't angry. It wasn't even curious. It was low and flat and bruised with something that sounded a lot like panic hiding under a blanket of calm. "You don't need to know that." She didn't respond. The kitchen clock ticked loud in the quiet. Her coffee had stopped steaming. She finally reached for it, but her hand stopped halfway and curled back to her side. I stood up, took the photo back, slid it into a folder. No speech, no threats, no lecture about respect or loyalty or the 100 little ways she'd cracked the spine of what we used to be, because this wasn't about fixing anything. This was about showing her that the mirror had turned and she didn't like what she saw. She looked at me like a stranger, a version of me she hadn't expected, not furious, not groveling, just done. She opened her mouth again, maybe to say she was sorry or that it wasn't what it looked like or that we should talk. But I stepped past her, took my keys off the hook, and walked out the door. She didn't follow. And that was the moment I knew the game had shifted, not because I had power now, but because I'd stopped asking her to care. It was one of those evenings that didn't need much help to be perfect. Warm breeze, soft orange sky folding down behind the houses, the kind of late spring night when people leave their windows open and pretend the world is simpler than it is. I pulled into the driveway right at 6:40 p.m. 2 paper bags of Thai takeout in the passenger seat, pad see ew, green curry, shrimp rolls. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I knew she'd smell it the moment I opened the door. The lights were on inside the house. The porch light, too, flicked on early like it always was when she expected me home. It used to mean welcome. Now it just meant she'd been watching the clock. I didn't go in. Instead, I walked around the side, straight to the backyard, through the gate that used to be for the dogs. I clicked the latch quietly, the way I had 100 times before, and set the food on the patio table I'd cleaned that morning. Sabrina arrived 2 minutes later. Simple dress, hair in a loose braid, no makeup, just her and that sharp, knowing calm she wore better than any shade of lipstick. She didn't ask if my wife was home. She didn't need to. We sat, unpacked cartons, passed sauce back and forth without saying much. The sound of forks on takeout boxes, the hum of traffic 2 blocks away, the occasional clink of ice in her glass. Everything around us felt soft and steady. Then I saw it, a flicker at the kitchen window. Just the faintest movement, curtains shifting, the vertical blinds tilted just wrong. I didn't look directly at it, didn't give it oxygen. I just reached for another shrimp roll and let the silence do the talking. Sabrina followed my gaze, then lowered her voice to a whisper that barely touched the air. "That look," she said, eyes still on the window. "That's the one they give when they realize you're done." I didn't respond, didn't smile, just leaned back in my chair, stretched one leg out under the table, and let the night carry on. Inside, she was watching. I knew she was. She wouldn't be able to help it. Thai food was her favorite. That was deliberate. So was the patio light I left on. So was the extra glass I set out and filled, even before Sabrina arrived. I wanted it visible, not to rub anything in, just to clarify. I wasn't sulking. I wasn't scheming. I was finished. Sabrina poured us both another drink, tapped the edge of her glass to mine gently. Not a toast, just a note of presence. "To peace," she said. "To peace," I repeated. Inside the house, I saw another shift in the window, like she'd stepped back, like the view was too much. I didn't follow, didn't check my phone, didn't care if she'd left to call someone or cry or spin a new version of the truth. That wasn't my story anymore. Sabrina told me about a coworker who used her mug and how she let it slide for months before finally snapping. We laughed more than we should have. I refilled the drinks again. The food cooled in front of us. half-eaten, forgotten in the way only people at ease can forget. At one point, Sabrina leaned forward, rested her elbow on the table, and said, "You ever think you stayed because it was easier than leaving?" I nodded slowly. "It wasn't love that kept me. It was habit." She nodded back. "Habit's the quietest kind of prison." We sat there until the mosquitoes finally won. Then I walked her to the gate. She paused before stepping through. "I don't need anything from you," she said. "I know. But if you ever need dinner that's not a message, you know where I am." I smiled. "So do they." She left. The gate clicked shut behind her. I walked back to the table, collected the leftovers, threw away just enough to make it clear I wasn't saving it for anyone else. Inside, the window stayed dark. She hadn't cooked dinner that night, and she never would again. She came home later than usual. I heard the front door open from upstairs. Keys jingling, heels too loud on the tile, like she was trying to sound casual. The kind of entrance that hoped for normalcy, as if the past few weeks hadn't started to rot beneath the surface. I didn't come down. Let her find it on her own. The folder was waiting on the kitchen counter, cream-colored, thick, perfectly squared to the edge of the marble. Not slanted, not sloppy. Next to it, 1 cup of coffee, still warm. I had timed it that way. Old habit. She always liked the smell of fresh coffee after work. I just gave her one last dose of comfort before the collapse. Inside the folder, separation papers. Not a draft, not a threat. Final, prepared, clean, legally reviewed. Under that, financial spreadsheets, asset breakdowns, statements she never bothered to check. Every dollar, every joint account, every transaction she assumed I wasn't watching. Itemized, annotated, and below that, printouts, screenshots, phone records, timestamps, transcripts from the camera audio, 1 still photo per day, over 4 days, all labeled, all dated, no dramatics, no flames, just facts, paper trail truth she couldn't explain away. On top of the stack, a single handwritten note. "Friendship doesn't include betrayal. Consider this my final act of kindness." I could almost hear the silence when she read it. The way she'd go still, like someone realizing the air in the room had shifted without warning, the moment when guilt collides with consequence and finds no soft landing. Her first call came 3 minutes later. I watched the screen light up once, then again. I didn't answer, didn't even touch the phone, and just let it ring while I sat in the garage, hands resting on the steering wheel of a truck I hadn't driven in months. She called again, then a text. "We should talk, please." Another buzz, a second text. "This isn't you. Can we just slow down?" I set the phone on the passenger seat face down, let it vibrate until it stopped, then picked up the pen and signed the final line on my own copy of the papers. It wasn't revenge. It was a boundary. For too long, she mistook my quiet for weakness, my willingness to work things out as fear of losing her. She had no idea I'd already done the grieving in silence, in hotel rooms, on hard drives, in backyards with empty takeout boxes. I stepped back into the house about 10 minutes later. Her car was still parked, her purse on the hook, but she was nowhere in sight. I walked through the rooms, living room, dining area, hallway, and then I saw her, in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed with the papers in her lap, and her phone resting useless beside her. She didn't look up, didn't speak, didn't cry, just sat there, blinking hard, as if the paperwork was some dream she could still wake up from. I didn't approach. I didn't sit beside her. I just said, calm and quiet, "Everything you need is there, including time." Then I walked out. Downstairs, I packed one bag, the essentials. I'd already moved most things into storage earlier that week, carefully, unnoticed. She hadn't noticed the shoes missing, the files gone, the books rearranged. She hadn't been looking for signs, 'cause she thought I'd never leave. I left the house the way you leave a chapter, marked, dog-eared, but done. Not a trace of bitterness. Just a clear ending where it was supposed to be. And as I pulled away, her last message appeared on my phone. Is this really it? I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Some answers come loud, but the real ones arrive as silence. It was almost sunset when the knock came. 3 slow taps. Not urgent, just hopeful, hesitant. The kind of knock that isn't sure whether it wants the door to open or stay closed. I already knew it was her. She'd waited until the hour was soft, until the light outside flattered what was left of the illusion she wanted to bring with her. She knew me well enough to pick a time that used to mean something: dinner, wine, a show we both pretended to like but never finished. But I didn't rush to the door. I looked over at Sabrina, curled on the couch in a gray sweater, one leg tucked under her, flipping absently through a book she probably wasn't reading. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine. "You good?" she asked. No fear in her voice, just awareness. I nodded. "Yeah, I'm good." I opened the door. She stood there, wind-blown, tear-streaked, holding her arms tight across her chest like they might protect her from something that had already happened. She started, but the words caught. Her voice cracked in that way that always used to pull something out of me. Sympathy, guilt, the need to fix. This time it didn't. "I'm sorry," she said finally, eyes searching past me. "I was stupid. I lost control. But it didn't mean—" I stepped aside just a little, just enough for her to see Sabrina on the couch. She saw her and froze, not angry, not surprised, just gutted. Because she thought she had time, because she thought she still mattered more than she did. Sabrina didn't move. She didn't smirk. She didn't posture. She simply turned a page, calm as ever. I stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind me until it clicked. She looked at me like she didn't recognize the man standing there. Not because I'd changed, because she'd stopped paying attention long before I did. Her lips trembled. "Please, can we just talk?" I shook my head. Once, slowly. "You weren't honest," I said. "But I was, every day, every chance, every time I showed up, even when you didn't deserve it." She took a shaky breath. "And now?" I continued, my voice low but clear. "I owe you nothing." That stopped her. Not because it was cruel, but because it was true, and she couldn't argue with it. I walked past her without another word. The smell of her perfume was still familiar. It didn't move me. At the bottom of the porch steps, I heard the door open again behind me. Soft footsteps joined mine. Sabrina didn't touch me. She didn't need to. Her presence was its own kind of statement. Quiet, steady, earned. We didn't look back. We didn't slam the door. We just didn't invite her in. Behind us, the house didn't shake. No voices, no drama, just silence. The kind that doesn't mean pause, the kind that means ending. And that was the last message. No text, no speech, just the undeniable truth. She'd gambled everything and lost to someone who never needed revenge to win.